Hello, today we are going to express a fraction with denominator 10 as an equivalent fraction with denominator 100 and use this technique to add two fractions with respective denominators 10 and 100. Now looking at this first problem, I have 53 plus 1/10. The first thing I want to do before adding these fractions is take a look at the denominators. Are they the same or are they different? If they are different, we need to do something to these fractions to make the denominators different. And we can use equivalent fractions to help us do this. Now we have 53 hundredths and we have 1/10. Looking at these two fractions, we want to determine which fraction can I change to make my denominator 100. And this process is finding an equivalent fraction. So I'm going to take a look at 1/10. And I'm thinking that to myself, 10 times something gives me 100. Now, if I multiply my denominator by 10, I have 10 times 10, which is 100. And that's exactly what I want because now I want to make sure my denominators in both these fractions are the same. And if I make them both 100, I can then simply add my numerators. But when I'm finding an equivalent fraction, it is important to recognize that if you multiply the denominator by 10, you need to also multiply my numerator by 10. So 1 times 10 is also 10. So now I can change 1/10 to the fraction 10 hundredths. I'm going to just rewrite that right up here. And now looking at these two fractions, I see that they both have a denominator of 100. Now I did not change 53 hundredths because I already had the denominator 100. Now if I chose to divide, instead of multiplying, I did 100 divided by 10, I would get 10. But if I did 53 divided by 10, I would not get a whole number. And we want to make our life very easy when we're doing this and keep our numerators whole numbers. So now, when I see that both my denominators are 100, I can simply add my numerators. Now, 53 plus 10, many of you might recognize that that is simply 63. But if you need to rewrite this on the side and do 53 plus 10, that is absolutely fine. So now the answer to this problem is 63 hundredths. Looking at my next problem, I have 3/10 plus 65 hundredths. By looking at both my denominators, I first recognize that they are not the same. So I have to do something to one of them to change it so my denominator is now 100. And I'm going to take a look at 3/10 because I know that 10 times 10 is 100. So 3/10, I can find an equivalent fraction so my denominator is also 100. And just like the previous problem, I could do that by multiplying my denominator by 10. But if I multiply my denominator by 10, I also need to do the same to my numerator. And 3 times 10 is 30. So this is showing us that 3/10 is equivalent to 30 hundredths. So now I could take 30 hundredths and I can simply add it to 65 hundredths. Now, some of you might be able to do this in your head, but some of you might need to write out on the side 65 plus 30, which this is absolutely fine. And when you're doing the problems today, this is why you need scrap paper. So now I'm going to do 5 plus 0 is 5, and 6 plus 3 is 9. So my numerator here is 95, and my denominator is 100. Notice I'm keeping the same denominator during this entire process. So the answer to this problem is 95 hundredths. Now for my last problem here, I have three fractions. However, we're still doing the same exact process. And by looking at these three fractions, I see that my denominators are 10, 100, and 10. So I have to do something to them to change the denominator so they are all the same. So I'm first going to take a look at 4/10. Now, just like the previous problems, we're going to do something to this fraction to find a denominator of a 100. So we're looking to find an equivalent fraction. So here, if I want to do something to make my denominator 100, I can do 10 times 10. Now, if I multiply my denominator by 10, I'm also going to multiply my numerator by 10 as well. This is showing me that 4/10 is equivalent to 40 hundredths. So I'm going to change 4/10 up here to 40 hundredths. Now I'm looking at my next fraction, 38 hundredths, and I see that my denominator is already 100, so I can leave this fraction exactly the same. But now when I go to 2/10, I notice that my denominator is not 100, so I need to find another equivalent fraction. So just like 4/10, I'm going to multiply my numerator by 10, giving me 2 times 10 is 20, and my denominator by 10 as well. 10 times 10 is 100. And now this is showing me that 2/10 is equivalent to 20 hundredths. So up here I'm going to change this to 20 hundredths. And now I can add all three of my fractions together. And since all the denominators are exactly the same, I'm going to keep the answer to be a 100 as well. So now I could simply add 40 plus 38 plus 20. And now notice I lined up all the digits in my ones place, all the digits in my tens place. So if I'm starting with my ones place, 0 plus 8 plus 0 is 8. 4 plus 3 is 7. 7 plus 2 is 9. So now my numerator is going to be 98 hundredths, giving me an answer to this problem as 98 hundredths. So as you continue the work today, all of the work is very, very similar to what you see in this video. At any time, if you need to refer back to this video, it will be posted on my YouTube channel as well. And feel free to look back at this video to help you with any of the assignments in the next few weeks.